Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 33 of Elves, Rings, and Dirty Things. My name is Sean. I'm one of your co-hosts, and I'm here with my other co-host and brother-in-law, Sam. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Sean. Good to see you.
We are continuing with season 1 of the Disney Plus series Andor, but before that, we have some things we want to talk about before we get into the meat of what we're going to do today, or potatoes if you're meat adverse. Sam, you have a little piece of news, an article that you would like to just touch on?
Oh, the Rings of Power update? Yeah, so as some of you may know, there is currently a strike. The Writers Guild of America is going on strike, halting production of a number of different movies and TV shows. Lord of the Rings, or Amazon's Lord of the Rings of Power, is continuing with production, although the showrunners and the writers are not participating in the show. Sean and I are in agreement that this is a good news update, that the showrunners who fumbled season 1 pretty significantly are not involved in the ongoing production of season 2. Hopefully, the people that are involved will do a better job. Sean, anything to add on that?
I mean, not really. More or less, I'm all for whatever the writers want, so give them what they want. But in the case of Rings of Power, yeah, I texted you the article, and you had already read it and had the same thought, but separately we came to the same conclusion of the joke that it might be better for the show if the writers and showrunners aren't involved with season 2. I mean, everybody who's been listening so far knows all of the qualms that we have with season 1 and the problems with the writing, but I don't know, I thought it was pretty funny. I mean, there's other things going on too. Like, you sent me a clickbaity article about people fearing for bees. Yeah. And I didn't, to be honest, I didn't open it or read the article because you told me it was clickbait.
You shouldn't have. Well, so real quick on that, because it is kind of funny. And it's interesting too, how susceptible I am, and maybe you are as well, to some of these clickbaity headlines regarding Lord of the Rings content, as we're probably a year away from season 2 based on our conjectures. The headline was Amazon's Lord of the Rings of Power, season 2 being criticized because the production is causing animal deaths. And I'm thinking, oh God, horses or dogs or something significantly bad, very unsettling. And then I click on the article, and the locals in England are concerned because some of the outdoor scenes are disrupting the habitat of local bees, flies, and ants. And it's just... And I kind of stopped reading after a certain point, but is there like one local bug nut who's protesting the production because his ant farm got kicked over or something? Anyway.
Well, I'd say if it truly is affecting bees, then I will come to the defense of bees. But if it's ants and flies, I could give a shit.
Everybody loves bees. Everybody loves bees, but not enough to stop buying the produce that is grown in ways that harm bees. So I don't think Amazon Lord of the Rings is causing colony collapse disorder. Look to your pesticides and herbicides for that.
I like to plant bee-friendly wildflowers, native flowers. I like to make mead from the bee juice that they produce.
Do you hear that, everybody? Sean is morally superior because of his
to you at least.
Hey, I support bees. I'm participating in no mo may.
Yeah, you mocked the article about bee habitat destruction.
Well,
so
it was more me mocking the article itself.
No, you're mocking the individuals who are coming to the bees' defense.
Yes, because they're probably earthy, crunchy types.
Okay.
Anyway, so there's your Amazon Lord of the Rings update. Production goes on without the writers and showrunners, which is a good thing, and they're destroying all the bee habitat in UK, which is a bad thing.
And that led you to, speaking of Rings of Power, a complaint that you
Amazon.
wanted to air. Yeah, about Amazon in particular.
So this is something that I picked up on a little bit in our watch of season 1 of the Rings of Power, but the other night I was watching something else it was Fury. I was watching Fury. I was texting you during, and the interaction, the Amazon app is, and I said this as earlier, it was either designed by incompetent morons or evil geniuses, because it is simultaneously, there's obviously a huge library of content and a lot of things on there that I would like to watch. And I pay for Prime, so a lot, and we have Stars, so a lot of high quality movies are available for free. But the app is always really slow. It's slow to load. It's slow to navigate. If you want to type in a search, there's no voice search feature as far as I'm able to find. So I have to type. And then unlike every other keyboard where you interact with either a controller or a remote, you can usually scroll around really quickly and it doesn't lag. And then you can kind of wrap around, where if you're on one edge of the keyboard and you keep going, it loops around to the other edge, kind of like a typewriter or something like that. Amazon doesn't do that. So if you go off of the keyboard, you enter the suggested search results, or you go back to the navigation menu. So it makes typing in your things just really complicated. And then it's there. I had to turn the subtitles, or the closed captions on, because my daughter was sleeping in the same room and I didn't want the volume to get too loud. By the way, she had a little bit of a fit, and watching the final very violent scene of Fury seemed to relax her and help her fall asleep. Hey. So baby likes war movies. She also liked Top Gun Maverick. Anyway, so Amazon's app is just so counterintuitive, poorly designed, and considering that they own half of the internet, you think it would run a little bit faster. Like, do they need to add some more servers into the gigantic Amazon complexes that are hosting Amazon Web Services? Rant over.
So what you need to do is do what I do and just use voice to text on my remote, and then it just searches things way easier for me.
Yeah, that would probably
I don't
help.
know. I don't know why you don't do that.
That would
like when I need to catch up on Critical Role, I'll just into my voice remote, Critical Role Campaign 3, episode 45, and then boom, there it is.
And so this doesn't need to be a tutorial in using the voice to text remote, but you do that when you're just in your normal channel surfing. You're not already in the Amazon app, correct?
No, I do that when it depends on the app that I want to use. So if I'm in Amazon, then I'll just say that once I get to the search bar.
Okay, I have not been able to utilize voice search in the Amazon app. I will do voice search, and I will do voice search when I'm in normal TV watching, and it'll pull things up on Amazon, and I can navigate directly to it. In the Amazon app itself, I have only been able to use the keyboard, which is terribly engineered. But my main complaint is the lagginess and how fucking long it takes to get to anything that you want to watch, and how cumbersome it is to search for things. And it's at a certain point, people are going to stop using your app because it's impossible to find anything. Anyway, that's me.
Well, I'm glad
this is old man yells at cloud.
Glad you're able to
yells at the cloud.
Get that off your chest.
Are we done with all of our non-Andor topics?
I think so.
Oh no, D&D movie. There's a funny short little article in the Atlantic magazine about the D&D movie and its charming humor. I agreed with it. I think, Sean, you agreed with most of the kind of depiction of the movie and how it gets the humor right. And we've talked about how that's an important part of fantasy. And I am in the process of rewatching the Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves movie. Haley and I will probably finish that later tonight. I can't tell you what our daughter thinks, but so far so good. Haley enjoys it. And the humor, I'm reminded of how funny it is.
So what's this article? I mean,
it's in the Atlantic. I'm not going to reread the whole article. I thought
you were going to give at least the major plot points of it, not just.
So the article one, the article, the okay, author.
Hold on.
All right, fine. You're dragging me.
No. I need to say my piece before you talk.
Okay.
You bring up an article in the Atlantic that you wanted to talk about, and you just confirmed with me that I agreed with the points of it, and then you don't bring up any of the points.
Okay. Well, no. The points were primarily the humor and how it was funny without being, or what it was the right combination of silly and sincere.
And what's the main example?
The character Jarnathan.
There you go.
The Aarakocra, who plays an important role in the beginning of the film, and then a role in the final scene in the film, comedic in both instances. And it actually prompted the author to resume playing Dungeons and Dragons, which she started to kind of as a joke, but then started doing it because she and her friends were really enjoying it. So just a good little glimpse into somebody's encounter with Dungeons and Dragons, the game, and Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, the movie, which again, it is now available to stream. I own it digitally. We'll return to it at some point in the future, I'm sure.
I'm waiting for it to come out on disc so I can get my physical copy. But
are you a physical copy movie person?
I am.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, and this is particularly why I do it. If I buy a disc, especially with my Xbox, if I buy a disc game, I can resell it and get a profit, even if it's only like $10, $15 when I'm done. When I buy these digital downloads for the same price as the disc, and then I can't sell it to anybody, and it's just on my hard drive, like, what's the point?
Yeah.
If you're gonna do digital downloads, reduce the price, because nobody's getting the physical disc anymore. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm stubborn, and I'm going to keep buying physical discs until they make them obsolete. And I'm going to do the same thing with films as well.
I mean, I think you're doing the right thing. Because you're not guaranteed to have access to that digital content wherever and whenever you want it, like you would be. You could grab a disc, take it with you, and just have a laptop without the internet and be able to watch whatever you wanted to if you're going on a flight or traveling somewhere, whatever it is. But when Haley and I moved, there was some issue with moving our Comcast to our new house, and we had to set up a new Comcast account and lost all of the digital purchases that we had. And it wasn't a ton, it wasn't hundreds of dollars, but it was several things that I would have wanted to have access to, including one series that we purchased that I was still in the middle of watching. So it's
enough to piss you off.
Yeah, it pisses me off. It pissed me off. That series is very hard to find. It's an older series. I don't even think it's available anymore. Yeah, and then there are things like the Star Wars. I have a physical copy of the original Star Wars trilogy on VHS, the final copy that was released without the new digital enhancements. This is just the remastered stuff, because we can talk about this some other time, but the digital enhancements to the original Star Wars trilogy degraded the movie in my mind. And I want access to the original copy. Now I just need to get a VCR.
Yeah, that's my brief rant on digital downloads versus physical copies. And we wouldn't have got that if you hadn't brought up the D&D article. So I appreciate that. And
it drives my hatred of the Amazon Prime Video app.
But for the potatoes of
or the meat.
I didn't want to say meat. People are vegetarian. They don't like animal cruelty and all that. I mean, 7 horses died at whatever that race is, Kentucky Derby.
I think you're going to make up some. I thought you were going to slander the production of the Rings of Power.
Oh, Rings of Power. No. But when you brought that up, in my head, I went to like 7 horses have died in the days leading up to Kentucky Derby at Churchill Downs or whatever that race course is. So I don't know. I'm starting to become anti Kentucky Derby at this point. But anyway, I digress again.
I always think the Kentucky Derby is such a gigantic waste of time. The race lasts a couple of minutes, and they just squeeze as much possible bullshit out of it as possible.
All the pomp and circumstance.
Yeah.
People with big hats. But anyway, we're here to talk about episodes 5, 6, and 7 of the Disney Plus Season 1 series, Andor. I think you've completely turned around from your episode 1 reaction of this show is shit to this is a good show.
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
180-degree change in attitude. I think especially episodes 5 and 6, maybe 6 primary. 6 is the actual heist that we've been building toward. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And I can't wait to talk about it, because it's just so many great examples of doing the right thing when it comes to producing a television show or a movie. And it was absolutely great. The show is, we watched this earlier in the week, earlier than I normally watch content for this podcast, because I really wanted to get into it, and I had to resist watching ahead. I want to kind of maintain the being,
episodes as we go.
Yeah, the future of the show being unknown, so I can we can have our prediction conversation and whatnot. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this recording, so I can go back and keep watching the rest of the season.
Yeah, so we're going to go back and forth, and we're going to read the Wikipedia synopses because they're a little bit more in depth for each episode. I'm going to start with episode 5, and then we're going to talk about it. Sam's going to do 6. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to do 7. We're going to talk about it. So episode 5, The Axe Forgets. On Eldani, Clem hides his past from his fellow rebels and is met with distrust from most of them, particularly Skeen. Tamarin trains Cassian and the other rebels for the planned heist. While traveling to the Eldani Imperial garrison, Cassian reveals that he is a mercenary. Vel decides to continue with the mission and hold off on dealing with Clem's past until they have achieved their objectives. Imperial officer and double agent Lieutenant Gorn, or Lieutenant if you're British, covertly aids the rebels. On Coruscant, Edie Karn emasculates her son Cyril as he explores new career prospects. That's a really funny way to put their interactions. Mon Mothma establishes a new charitable foundation while managing increasingly tense relations with her husband and daughter. ISB supervisor Blevin acquires a hotel as the new ISB headquarters on Ferrix. Meanwhile, his rival Miro and her assistant Hirt reach the conclusion that the rebels are conducting a series of coordinated heists of Imperial weapons and technology. Luthen anxiously waits for a transmission from Vel and her rebel team. Sam, initial thoughts on episode 5. This is like the calm before the storm of the heist.
Yeah, the tension that they are building with this heist culminates in episode 6, but it's really, the foundation is laid in episode 5. Primarily, I think the summary was Clem hiding his past and the building mistrust. We have some really great scenes with Skeen. I think this is where Skeen goes through Clem or Cassian's backpack. Yeah, looking for stuff, and there's tension there. And I thought the marching practice was really interesting. They do a good job of sprinkling these little hints that something might be off. Like something I caught, which turned out to be absolutely nothing, was Taramin is giving them marching instructions. And then Cassian says, "Oh, you two should switch," referring to Skeen and Taramin. And they say, "Why?" It's like, "Oh, because your gun, you're left-handed, you're right-handed. Your guns should be facing out, not in." And that's a really interesting thing, because then it's turned out that Taramin is a stormtrooper. And then in my mind, because I'm conspiratorial, as you've accused me, I'm like, okay, so if Taramin's actually a stormtrooper, shouldn't he have known that that's how soldiers should be arranged when they're marching? So blah, blah, blah. So I'm thinking, was that intentional? Whatever else. Either way, it added to this suspense of, I think at one point I wrote, just trust who's the spy. I was thinking somebody in this group is actually an Imperial agent. They're also paranoid that it affects the audience as well. And then I really liked how Cassian kind of demonstrates how observant he is by explaining how each of them are either left or right,
left hand, right hand.
Yeah, I thought that was great.
That Nemec is right-handed but shoots left. Like all of these different,
yeah. Which you think, like, that's exactly the type of attention to detail that you would want in a really good spy, a really good agent, right? Just being able to remember those things and on relatively little exposure. Let's see the moments between Cyril and his mom are fucking great. The interaction. I mean, the summary that we read said emasculated. He is being treated more. It's more infantilization than emasculation.
She treats him like a child. And there's that whole aspect of he was off and he was successful. And then he comes like crawling back to his mom on Coruscant. And that's how she's treating him. Like,
but he's also, they kind of underline it too. He's eating cereal. Like he's got like blue milk with like the blue Clapton Crunch berries. So I have a prediction.
Another one?
I have. We'll do a section toward the end here with the predictions I've already made, but I'm going to add one to the list here, which is I think Uncle Harlow is Andy Serkis.
Okay. Noted.
All right. So there's some.
Let me see if there's anything else I have on this episode. The big things for me were just the scenes where they're training and the use of the TIE fighter was so great. Like being on ground level and when they're in the distance and then you see the TIE fighter moving across the sky, just the noise, that screeching wail of TIE fighters is very
evocative
of just like childhood watches of Star Wars. So I don't know. I loved it. And then just that terrifying view of you being on the ground and this spaceship flying over you. And when it like buzzes the river like that, it was great. I loved it.
there's a scene that we can talk about in episode 7 where that feeling is amplified because it's not a TIE fighter, but it's a Star Destroyer.
Oh yeah, we'll get there.
And I did have one other thought here. I think this is some of the ISB plot with specifically Miro, who is
Deirdre.
Deirdre, yeah, that's the same person, right? Deirdre Miro.
Mm-hmm.
She's talking about this organized theft ring, and I'm kind of wondering if there's more, if they're either seeing more than is. Well, I'm just wondering what the real story is here, because I was under the impression that Cassian, acting on his own, stole the Starpath unit. He had an opportunity to do it, but ISB, and maybe this is them being slightly paranoid or just the audience not having all of the information. ISB says it's an organized theft ring, and this is evidence of a growing rebellion, which may or may not be the case. There is a growing rebellion, but was the theft of the Starpath unit a part of it? To be determined.
Yes, I mean, there's already an answer. I think in your rage of episode 1, you missed this plot point. Would you like me to explain it?
Sure.
Andor did steal the Starpath unit from the place that Deirdre Miro oversees.
Yeah.
He takes it to Ferrix to sell it, and it's in the battle, he loses it. The ISB recovers it and then says, oh, this was the Starpath unit from this location. And that's what makes Deirdre Miro go, wait, this might be connected. If my Starpath unit is showing up over here on Ferrix, the other end of the galaxy, and some guy was trying to buy it, maybe all of these things are connected.
So my question is about all of the other things, specifically other thefts of, and maybe it's episode 5 or episode 6 of other like sensitive Imperial technologies.
She's starting to piece everything together that there is a coordinated rebel process.
So my question is, was Andor's theft or Cassian's theft of the Starpath unit a part of that organized effort, or was his theft more opportunistic and coincidental, or do we just not know the answer?
I think his was more opportunistic and coincidental, because when he talks to Luthen about it, Luthen's like, how did you steal it? And then he just says, I walked in and took it. Yeah. It's not like it was,
I was recruited and somebody,
he was working with anybody. Yeah.
He was. So, I mean, but either way, it does kind of point to how people in the intelligence industry or the intelligence apparatus may see a conspiracy where one doesn't exist. They just happen to be a galaxy spanning, they're the galactic empire. They have all this advanced technology. People are going to try to steal it, whether or not they're doing it in a coordinated way or not. And we see this in this arc of episodes. Their response to these actions may actually generate the...
Yeah, we don't want to jump the gun. Yeah, okay. Don't jump the gun. But the last big thing of this episode, episode 5, is that the ISB has taken over Ferrix. They have turned the hotel into like a headquarters. Stormtroopers are present on the streets of Ferrix now. And yeah, what they didn't want in episode 1 of the Empire coming in and taking over the territory of this corporate security company, they have failed, and the Empire is now expanding their reach.
And that's a theme that we'll get more of over the course of the next couple episodes. So episode 6, titled The Eye. Aided by Gorn, the rebels infiltrate the garrison by posing as an escort squad for Commandant Jayhold Behaz, Gorn's superior. They take Behaz's family as hostages and force him to give them access to the payroll vault. While loading the credits onto a freighter, they are discovered by Imperial forces. Terramin and Gorn are killed in the ensuing firefight. Cinta is unable to make it onto the ship, so only Cassian, Skeen, Vel, and Nemik escape from Aldhani. During takeoff, Nemik is crushed by an unsecured load of credits and suffers a severe injury. They land on the planet Fresno to treat Nemik's injuries. With Vel occupied looking after Nemik, Skeen proposes to Cassian that they flee and split the payroll between the two. Enraged and fearing for his life, Cassian kills Skeen. He tells Vel about what happened and informs her of his plans to take the amount he was promised as payment and leave. Vel gives Cassian Nemik's manifesto in accordance with Nemik's dying wishes. Back on Coruscant, the ISB agents are gathered to formulate reprisals to the heist, while Luthen hears news of the theft and quietly celebrates.
What's your flag that you would like to point about the planet Fresno?
Isn't Fresno where George Lucas is from Fresno, California?
Could be.
I think it is. I think that's where they filmed, or that was the basis for American Graffiti.
Cool.
So nice little nod to the creator of Star Wars.
Nice little tidbit.
If that is in fact where he's from.
Is that where Skywalker Ranch is?
No, Skywalker Ranch is in Marin County, like across the north of San Francisco, I think.
Oh, nice. Well, episode 6, this was like the culminating episode of the series so far. We have the heist. Goes right, it goes wrong. It goes right for the most part, all the way up until the escape. But I don't know, I love the whole sequence of infiltration on the two fronts. We have infiltration right in front of the bad guys, and then we have a more secretive espionage like that.
The wet insert.
Yeah, they're underwater hanging on to like a submersible propelled thing. They have the goggles looked very, I don't know, human, modern that they were wearing. I wish they would have been a little bit more Star Wars spacey. But yeah, I don't know. The whole episode was great.
Yeah,
suspenseful from beginning to end.
Oh my God, I was like my heart was beating so fast during every scene when they were marching up, and when the Cinta and Vel were like kind of waiting on the ladder for the people to pass by, and that they even hinted earlier in either that episode or the one prior that one communications officer kind of leaves his post and walks around. Yeah, so this is what in retrospect I really loved about this episode. The rebels had a good plan and they executed it well. Everybody did what they were supposed to do. And they didn't fall short. They didn't fail. It was somebody on the Imperial side somebody else did their job better in order to discover the heist. It was that communications officer kind of realizing, wait, why are the comms down? And then he was like, changing knobs, and he found their communication frequency. And he's like, oh, that's not good. Something bad is happening. And he takes the initiative, and well, they're not ultimately successful in stopping the heist. They at least, to their credit, they made a good effort doing it. I thought it was a really good way for the heist to go wrong, but us to not like lose confidence in the rebel characters that we're supposed to like. So I really enjoyed that part. And like, they had a good plan and they executed the plan. It's just somebody else did their job well too.
And that communications officer dies in the fight. I don't know if you caught that.
Oh yeah, what was it, like Kizik or Kisme or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know what his name was, but he ends up dying. But that's the thing. Like, we have Lieutenant Gorn dies.
Yeah, big body count at this.
Jay Hold, the commandant, dies of a heart attack. Apparently.
Yeah, they kind of skip. Like they showed him like grabbing his chest, but we never get like a.
He starts to get really sweaty, and then he grabs his arm, and then he falls down.
That's soft living, man. You got to train every day.
And then we have Tamarin also dies. And then your prediction of Nemec, technically you're wrong, and I'm going to get you on this technicality. He's injured during the heist, but he dies after a successful heist. So
died on the operating table. Yeah.
Even our synopsis says that as well. So. Yeah. So
well,
that's one big X for you.
Well, I'll take half. I'll take 50% credit for that. Yeah.
That's still a failing grade.
And that's true. I was right. He was too idealistic, too nice to die.
Which I love the concept of him giving his manifesto to Cassian.
Yeah, because you also kind of get the sense that Cassian is still.
It's not entirely for the money for Cassian. And
exactly.
I think Nemec was kind of onto that point, and in his dying wish, he was like, if I give Cassian this manifesto, it might turn him around.
Yeah.
To like believing in the cause.
Yeah. They do a good job of showing him. He kind of uses the fact that he's a mercenary to kind of end a lot of the discussion about his background, where he easily could come up with a story like Skeen did about how the Empire,
his brother,
treated him poorly, right? Like Skeen had what turned out to be a lie about his brother killing suicide because the Empire destroyed his farm and his livelihood. So Cassian could have done something like that, but he didn't. But you do, like you said, you get the hint that maybe under the surface there is a slightly more sophisticated anti-imperial sentiment there, which maybe we'll see that develop over the course of the season. I did have So in episode 5, I kept thinking like, who's the double agent? Who's going to turn on them? I was like, is it going to be Lieutenant Gorn? Is it going to be Terriman? Is Terriman actually, they say he used to be a stormtrooper. Is he actually a secret agent for the ISB? Turns out nobody was a double agent as far as we could tell, but Skeen was kind of on his own. And that was my next point. I think I said kind of early in episode 6, I have a note about who's going to steal the money for themselves. And turned out to have been Skeen. What did you think of Cassian just killing Skeen right there?
I mean, I disagreed with the synopsis that he kind of was scared for his life and killed Skeen.
I mean,
but I think he was
clear
like,
he like needed Cassian to fly the ship. Like you can't steal the money if you can't get away.
The only instance where I think he should have killed Skeen was not out of like fear for his life, but fear for that. I think at this point, Vel trusts Skeen more than she trusts Cassian.
Yeah.
So if Cassian says no to this plan of escaping with the money, the two of them, then all Skeen has to do is be like, Vel, this guy's gonna.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, not save his skin, but to at least get out of the situation, he's got to kill Skeen.
Yep.
Like, it just makes sense.
Yeah, no, it was a business decision. It wasn't out of fear.
But that's where this whole premise of Cassian being a shady character, I think is so great going back to the movie Rogue One. Like one of the first scenes in the movie, he kills a guy just to keep a secret. Like
I was like I haven't seen Rogue One in a while. He's like kind of freaking out, right? And he was going to give their position away, attract attention.
He was a spy. And he wasn't even saying that, but Cassian knew that he could break. And if the Imperials got him, he wasn't going to stay quiet. He was going to give up everything. Yeah. So Cassian's like, all right, man, sorry, you're dead.
Loose cannons. Yeah.
But to show that ability to make those decisions and then also show it in the show is just, yeah, it's great.
On to some slightly different topics. Just another thing that really added to my enjoyment of this episode was the actual Donnie people, the natives of this planet. I thought the costuming was really interesting. It made me think of kind of the natives of Lapland in kind of Scandinavia, northern Finland area, like kind of this like Siberian tribe, like they had very heavy woolen coats,
like shepherds.
Yeah, they're shepherds. And then during some of the scenes when they're doing their rituals in preparation for this, the celestial event, I did write down a note that it's like the creators of the show just rounded up some hippies in LA and was like, hey, wear this costume, do some hippie stuff, like your little drum circle. Yeah. It was like they're straight out of central casting for your middle-aged hippies. And my final thing here is that I don't know if he actually was ever called this, but in the subtitles, the doctor is Dr. Quadpaw, which is very fitting because he has 4 arms. Fun little Star Wars. You got to have your alien. We don't have a ton of aliens in this so far. But we had a nice little alien doctor. And then, did we have much?
This episode was entirely the heist. There was there's no Coruscant, there was no Luthen until the very end when we get Luthen hearing about the success. And one of the cool scenes I thought was Mon Mothma in the Senate chamber doing her speech, and then looking around, and then everybody starts to get distracted, and then that's how she finds out about it.
Yeah.
And she's pissed too, because I mean, this is where we get into that whole conversation of her complaining about what this heist is going to do for the Empire, like how they're going to react to something like this. And
that I like that scene. Good. You could see that when she was giving her speech, she was looking around, and I think a lot of the Senate pod things are empty, like no one's there, because the Senate is at this point increasingly a ceremonial kind of functionary body, whereas the Emperor is really the power source. But then people start chattering, and she like pulls out her tablet, right? That's just such a modern thing that would be fitting in a society, in a civilization where you have intergalactic communication, the HoloNet network, which, by the way, does kind of underpin my argument from earlier in the episode, or why don't you just have direct deposit? But whatever. I think that's it for episode 6, though. Is there anything else worth commenting on?
Just besides a bomb ass heist with people dying.
So well done.
Mm-hmm.
Even, I mean, and the violence was, I mean, it's Star Wars, so the violence isn't going to be gratuitous, but you get a sense that, it was tragic and not to plan, but I think it would have been a little too easy if things have just gone perfectly, right? And the only tension we get is between Skeen and Cassian. You kind of had to whittle things down.
Mm-hmm. And the other big thing is there was a conversation where they mentioned that Skeen dies. Actually, no, I'm going to save it for the next episode because I think it fits more.
Okay. So let's jump into it. Episode 7. Give us
Episode 7 was called Announcement. On Coruscant, Karn starts a new job at the Bureau of Standards. Colonel Wolf Yularen announces that the ISB has gained more surveillance and punitive authority, while Miro is challenged by Blevin for breaking protocol by accessing Imperial data without authorization. She persuades her superiors of her work's value and is assigned oversight of Ferrix. Luthen's assistant, Clea, instructs Vel to find and kill Cassian, as he knows Luthen's identity. Mon Mothma meets with Tay Kolma, an old friend and banker, and asks him to help her access family funds. Cassian returns to Ferrix to settle old debts and learns that people blame him for the corporate security crackdown. The presence of stormtroopers on Ferrix reminds Cassian of how his adoptive father, Clem, was murdered by Imperial clone troopers during a protest on Rick's Road. Cassian attempts to get Marva to leave Ferrix with him, but she decides to stay and oppose the increased Imperial presence. Cassian travels to the tropical tourist paradise of Niamos, adopting the name Keef Girgo. Sometime later, while walking towards a local store, he is unjustly arrested by a shore trooper and sentenced to 6 years of imprisonment. Now, this is hilarious because he gets arrested because of something that he did, even though he didn't do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the whole circumstances of people being arrested for no reason were because of something that he did. So I don't know. I thought that was pretty funny.
Justice, in a sense, poetic justice.
Found a way they actually did get the right guy in this instance.
So one thing that that at the beginning of this episode, I've thought to myself is that we haven't had a ton of examples about how the Imperial presence is unjust and how the Empire is unjust. We do get on Aldhani kind of the examples of how they're messing with the native culture and they're relocating people. And I think we get hints that pretty soon they're going to do this like massive construction project and completely obliterate that river area that was sacred to them. But we don't get the Sacred Valley. But we don't get a sense of how the kind of core worlds, the more civilized, and when I say civilized, I mean like more developed planets are affected by the Empire. Like Ferrix is the big point of it wasn't under Imperial control, and now it is. So obviously they're going to kind of step up these examples of the small injustices. So at the beginning of the episode, I was like, how are they going to demonstrate that the Empire is bad and worth rebelling against? But by the end of the episode, they do this job phenomenally, showing this kind of kangaroo court approach where people are just being sent to prison for 6 years and they don't even care. Like it reminded me of that scene from what is it, Dark Knight Rises, where the Scarecrow is the judge, like sentencing people to die. It was just such a great example of how a bureaucracy can be arbitrarily cruel, and you multiply that out over a galaxy, and you can see how people would rebel.
We get into a big part of the series where we learn how cutthroat the rebels are, and the whole point of Luthen is that he wants to remain anonymous. And he has a conversation with Clea, his assistant, where they're talking and they say, Clea says something like, well, there's like no loose ends besides Vel. And he goes, well, I wasn't careful enough with Cassian. So, I mean, he had doubts about Skeen. When Skeen is killed, Luthen's whole point is, okay, that's one less thing I have to worry about. So like people dying isn't a whole big thing for him for the most part. And you and I talked about this before we started recording, but we have Mon Mothma who's not okay with the results of the heist, and she's pretty pissed off when she finds out that it happened because she goes directly to Luthen to complain about it. But you have these different factions in the rebellion in Star Wars. Saw Gerrera, we already know in the Rogue One movie, they talk about him as being like this guerrilla warfare. He's okay with like innocent people dying because it's for the good of the cause. And then we have Mon Mothma, who's like the complete opposite of that, where she's pissed that something like this heist is going to make the Empire overreach and punish people for no reason. And she doesn't want innocents to be harmed. And then there's a really good conversation between Luthen and Mon Mothma, where he basically says, you've known this was the result. This was going to be the result the entire time. And we get into that mentality of Luthen. He's not much different from Saw Gerrera. He's willing to let people suffer for the good of the rebellion and to end the Empire. And this is what he wanted the entire time. Like he wanted the 80 million credits for sure, but he also wanted the Empire to begin to prove to the average person that they needed to be taken down. And that's going to boost recruitment in the rebellion and the ranks of people who are going to rise up. And then we see a prime example of it with Cassian at the very end where, I mean, sure, the people who were running away from the crime scene were guilty, but then he's just walking by and kind of looked suspicious and then gets arrested for like speaking out against the Empire or whatever.
Yeah, like walking or like running in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Something resisting an Imperial officer's conversation or something. Yeah, the tension between Mothma and Luthen is great. And you get the sense that Luthen has already gamed everything out and he sees where they need to go and how to get there. And Mothma is maybe a little bit more idealistic about what the rebellion could be. And she thinks with one hand she can provide material support to Luthen and those activities, but on the other hand, maintain this politician, this kind of advocate scenario. And she has this conversation with her friend, the banker, who I'm still kind of uncertain about him. Like he hints that my politics are pretty extreme. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. He seemed a little slimy. I think his character was in The Crown.
Oh, the actor?
The actor, yes. Yeah. So I think that I recognize the actor and thought that his character had been he's played like a slimy character in the past. Either way, it seems like Mon Mothma is not yet fully understanding what she's going to have to be okay with or what her support is going to allow, which is good. I mean, that was their conversation. Now, we know from consuming Star Wars content that Mon Mothma is a central part of the Rebel Alliance. She's the one who gives the briefing at the Return of the Jedi. So we know she makes it all the way there. I'm just wondering what else, how we're going to see partially her journey to that point. I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to go back to one of my earlier predictions about her and her husband. I said her husband would be dead or they would be divorced. We don't really get any significant developments here, except for the icy feeling between them is highlighted. And
the moment in the limo where he says, "Can we take the expressway to get the drive over faster?"
Because he doesn't want to be near her anymore. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, that was great. And it seems like he's also kind of working their daughter against him. So in between all of this space opera espionage stuff, we still just have two people kind of being jerks to each other. So in good interpersonal drama, and their apartment is incredible. Every scene set there is so classy. They just do it really well. It's such a different feel from Aldani and Ferrix, and it helps with that production value. This is something that Haley and I were watching together, and she commented on it as well.
Marva gives me Old Man from Up vibes. When
right. Yeah.
When Andor's like, we need to get out of here, and then she wants to stay to like fight back because I think she's at the point where they make her out to be this kind of outlaw scavenger, and I feel like she's built a home on Ferrix. They talk about her being involved with like this women's society. And then when Cassian's like, we need to leave, and she sees what's happening and how negative it's going. Yeah, she would want to stay and like defend her home when she's however old she is. She probably knows she doesn't have much more time.
Yep.
So I liked that whole concept, and then Cassian leaving her.
Yeah, you've mentioned Saw Gerrera a couple times in this episode. I think he has a line in Rogue One where they're all trying to escape the destruction, this huge tidal wave of the planet breaking apart after the Death Star fires on, I can't remember the name of the planet they're on, but he says, I'm tired of what?
Jeddah.
And he says, I'm tired of running, or I've run enough, or something like that. And that's kind of, we're getting a similar vibe from Marva, where in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, what are you really going to do to fight the Empire? Like, how is that not a death sentence, right? You've seen what they've done. And maybe this is part of it too.
They killed her husband.
They killed her husband. Her child is not only an adult, but also now very seemingly, set on leaving. So she's saying goodbye to him. He may never come back. So yeah, she's lived a life, and it's kind of the same thing where you're to a certain extent surrendering to fate. She's going to keep fighting, but I don't necessarily see that going super well, especially within our timeline. So that was a sad moment in the show, but it's good. And I think you have to also maybe sever some of these connections for Cassian so that he can have this next chapter in his path. But then also, if we come back to Ferrix, there'll be some emotion involved with it. Like his farewell with Bix was also pretty, not as tender as with Marva, but that was a good conversation. It was a conversation that needed to happen. And I'm glad that they did it. It wasn't necessary to the plot, but it was good because I think that actress does a great job, and that's an interesting relationship for the show to have, and it helps with kind of humanizing both those characters.
Yeah, when he says the line to Bix, here's all the money I owe all these people, forget about me. And then she goes, it wasn't that hard the first time.
Yeah. You get the sense she's pretty hard boiled herself, right?
Yeah, that was a nice burn. But I mean, we're at the point, the next episodes are phenomenal. And we're finally getting into the stuff that everything up to this point I liked in the show. But compared to what's coming is so much better, Sam.
I mean, that I'm so glad to hear that, because this show has surpassed my relatively low expectations after episode 1 by leaps and bounds. And if it's going to get better, that is, I can't wait. Like I said, I wanted to jump ahead of our kind of recording schedule, but I'm trying to maintain this, this ability to react in time and kind of project and prognosticate about things that are going to happen. So I have another prediction along those lines. So we heard, was it Clea task Vel, who, by the way, Vel cleans up real good. It took me a second to realize who she was. Yeah. I have a prediction here that Vel is going to try to work through the prison system to get him shivved, get him off, get Cassian shivved in prison.
Okay. So here's the thing. Are you writing down these predictions? Because
I will. I am now.
Okay.
For Cassian to be shivved. Okay. And then we should say too, we had maybe 1 or 2 scenes in this episode with Cinta, who was the final member of the crew on Aldhani, who did not make it off planet.
Who's still on Aldhani.
And they even say she did what she was ordered to do or something. I think Clea said that.
Yeah, she's still doing what she was ordered to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they talk about this in the Empire's ratcheting up their response to the heist, that not only was everybody at the Aldhani garrison removed from their posts and replaced, 125 Donnies were also arrested on suspicion of being involved with the heist. So things are not going well for anybody who's not an active member, even the active members of the Empire. I mean, if you were on the base when the heist happened, who knows what's happened to you now?
Yeah, no, that's the Empire will chew up its own.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we haven't talked about is Cyril's taking a job at the Bureau of Weights and Measures or Standards or whatever it is, which nothing of consequence happens except there's a final scene where he's looking at the hologram image of Cassian, and you can tell he still
can't let it go.
And so I'm glad, because we're going to get hopefully some interesting stuff there. But the scenes with him like at his desk and just kind of walking through the Bureau of Standards, it is so reminiscent of just this of an insane bureaucracy, like something out of, I think it's the Terry Gilliam movie Brazil, where it just like takes us to this kind of absurd level of bureaucracy.
I was going to say just how depressing it looks.
Well, that
like
is
all of those different cubicles. Like, oh God, it looked horrible.
Yeah. I mean, you could see how he needs to think about Cassian just to get himself out of that terrible dead end job. But I guess we will see where that goes in the future episodes.
Now that we've recorded, Sam, you can just go straight into episodes 8, 9, and 10.
Well, I might do that tonight. I got to finish the Dungeons and Dragons movie. It'll depend on what my daughter is doing. If she's sleeping, then maybe we can finish that movie. If not, then I don't know. I might spend the next hour rocking a child and shushing.
All right, well, tell everybody how they can follow us.
You can find us on Facebook, Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things. You can send us an email, elvesringsnerdythings@gmail.com. We have our Buzzsprout page, Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things. Thank you for those of you who are sponsoring us on a monthly basis. That is an option available to those of you who would like. Your sponsorships help us with software for editing and transcribing, better equipment for a higher audio quality. Thank you for those of you who are. If you have any comments about this episode or our past episodes, please send us a message on Facebook or send us an email, and you can look for new episodes on Wednesday mornings. That's all I have. So everybody have a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you in the future.
See you, everybody.